but today we are going to go deep. There's some awesome stuff coming in today. So let me get started. If you guys can turn on your cameras, it's going to make it a little bit, not only will you learn it better because you'll be forced to focus. If you can turn on your cameras, but you'll also, I can see you guys a little bit better. And so I can actually judge what things are very clear or what things need to be, spent a little bit more time on. So we will begin in just a moment. If we can, just like previously, so many of you are already using a lot of this stuff. And I think the biggest difference between making this the best course you've ever went through and just being a really cool course that you learned a couple things and you thought it was entertaining, to make it the best course you've ever been through, you have to implement this stuff, right? So you have to be willing to try it. And that's the best advice I can give you, is just be willing to try it. And if there's any fear around there, like any hesitation, it's okay. If there's some fear around there, but you still have to try it. Like, trust in the results of everyone else. Everyone else has used this. So many people have used these techniques and they're having incredible success. And so leverage off of their evidence. If you need confidence, use other people's evidence. You don't need your own confidence. Use all the evidence from everyone else that's already using this stuff to trust that it works, and just try some of these things. Because today, obviously, we'll do a quick recap like we always do, but I'm going to go into some fun stuff, some story selling, some metaphor selling, some how to create your own bits, which is going to make you guys go to the next level if you ever your own bits, where you're not just singing someone else's song, but creating your own song. So we're going to go over those things today. But again, this stuff really only works if you're willing to actually do it. So you have to be willing to actually go out there and try it. And again, good sales is leadership, right? And leaders don't go 10th. Leaders don't go 4th. They don't go 2nd. Leaders go 1st. So we have to be willing to lead others. And so we have to be willing to go for things and try things. So with that being said, we'll hop right into a couple of the topics today. But as always, let's start with just some things that you guys have been enjoying, some takeaways, maybe aha moments, anything that has landed for you guys, even on the sales or just in general so far over the last few weeks. I'd love to hear from you guys. What are some things that you feel has been helpful? If you can, and I see a couple people put their hand up, just hit the reaction button on the bottom, and then hit the reaction button and hit the raise your hand. One thing as we kind of get started that I think would be helpful to note, when we do this metaphor selling and story selling and all these things, again, that's the bonus on top of the foundation. And you've heard me say this before, but I have to say it, like, the foundation is the most important, the framework. We gave you guys the stages of a call. 80 to 90% of the time when we do a call review, it's not because there was some mistake on their advanced embedded commands. 90% of the time, they missed maybe the 4 horsemen of the problem state. They didn't go into all 4 areas of the problem state. Or they missed handling the objections during the discovery stage, right? Timing, finances, spouse. They could have handled that early, but they forgot to. And now it happens at the objection stage, and now they're trying to scramble to kind of make it happen. So again, that is where your focus should be. Once you've been able to do full calls where you understand the framework and you're checking off all the boxes and you're, not missing anything there, then these other things add on. So as a quick kind of repeat, I'm going to give you guys 2 things that are absolutely important to remember around the framework. So please write this down. The first one is understanding why you're asking each question in your framework. Now, why do you need to do that? Because if they don't answer the right way, you have to have the ability to re-ask that question in a different way. For example, you want them to tell you what they're looking for in a program, and you say, like, so just so I have a little bit of context, can you let me know 1 or 2 things you are looking for in a program? Pretty straightforward question, So just so I have some context, can you let me know 1 or 2 things you are looking for in a program? And they go, yeah, I got to change what's happening right now. Like, where I'm at right now with my life is not good. I got to make some big differences. I got to make some changes quickly. That's a decent thing they said, but it doesn't answer the question that I asked, right? So you have to be like, make sense. And I sense the urgency. So I appreciate you actually reaching out and looking for some help. For you though, like when you say you want to see some changes happen, what are some of those changes you'd like to see happen in the next 30 to 60 days for you? Well, I'd want to see this change. I want to see this change. Okay. And so inside of a program, what are a couple of things you're looking for? Well, someone to help me get X, Y. And now we got there. Because so many times we'll listen to call reviews and someone will ask that question. And I'm like, you asked an amazing question. They gave you a bad answer and you just moved on to the next part of your framework. That was the moment you could have closed them. You were a couple questions away. That's almost always the situation. You're just a couple questions away. So that's number one. I told you there's two parts of the framework. Number one is knowing the why behind the question so that you could re-ask the question. And as a bonus tip, you could practice that. You could get a drilling partner and just practice asking the same questions back and forth. Really good sales drill, common sales drill. Part number two, and this is just as important, the difference between question number one and that gap to question number two, bridging it without sounding scripted is important. So here's what I mean. You have to ask the question, like say, what are your goals in the next 60 to 90 days? Say that's on the script. And then the next question is like, is that like your big goal or is that sort of phase one, right? Question one, what do you want to see in 60 days? Question two, is that your big goal or is that phase one? The difference between, or the gap has to be filled with just common language. For example, you ask someone, so just to have a little bit more context, can you kind of let me know like what you want to see in the next 60 days? They might say, sure, I would love to, make 5K a month in revenue. So they say, I'd love to make 5K a month in revenue. If you just go, now, is that your ideal amount of income or is that, sort of phase one? It's okay. That's an average salesperson. But the best version of you goes, okay, sweet. So 5K in revenue. Thank you for sharing me. Okay, so 5K. Now for you though, is that kind of like your long-term goal? Is that sort of phase one? That little combination right between the two questions where I'm like, okay, and that's helpful for me to hear though. I guess when you said 5K, is that kind of like your ideal amount of income, or would that be phase one for you? Or just those small little things makes a huge difference so that you don't sound scripted. Like you know what you're going to ask next, right? We all know what's on the framework, but it's almost like my brain is trying to figure it out. Okay, I guess, so when you said 5K, is that sort of like the long-term answer, or is that kind of like your just phase one? No, that's kind of like phase one. Oh, okay. So what's like the big goal? I want to know. Yeah, tell me. Right, it sounds conversational. That's those two things, knowing why you're asking the questions, and then those little bit of being human in between the two questions is key. Right, you got to be a human. It's unfortunate, but you got to be human. Drop it in the chat. Be human. I'm typing it now. I'll type it with you. Be human. There's a certain amount of people in the room. I want everyone to drop that in the chat, whether you're on phone or not. Be human. Because it's surprising, even to this day, people who are high level salespeople, as far as understanding the script, will miss certain things. They're just not being human enough. So this forces you to listen to their words. If you know you have to kind of mirror that they said 5,000, they want to make 5,000. Okay. And when you said, that 5K that you want to bring in, is that sort of like for you, just like overall, is that kind of before taxes, or what did you mean by that? Whatever it is, just show that you're listening, right? Super important. Now we went to, that was phase one. We talked about this kind of 3 levels when we teach salespeople, and we're rushing through it in 8 weeks. And it's really cool how far you guys are coming already. But first is framework. Second is personality selling. So let's talk about that for just a bit. Personality selling isn't just now that you have the framework, you treat everyone the same. You can start to modify things slightly based off the person in front of you. So again, let's keep it to 2. The 2 things that could be helpful when you're working on personality selling. Number 1, the buying window. Think about this like bubble that people buy in. If someone is too confident, they don't need you. So they'll just do it on their own. So you have to create doubt with that person that's too confident. How do you do that? So if someone is just like, yep, no, I've done it before. Yep, you'll be my fourth one. You know, say you're selling like some Amazon, I'll make you 5,000 more a month in passive income type of thing. And you're trying to ask questions. They're like, yeah, this is my third one. I've done a few in the past. Everything sounds good. It's like, I just want to know the price. Yeah, absolutely. And so when you say you've done a couple in the past, what kind of led you to choose those approaches? Just so I know. Well, I mean, the first one, someone kind of told me about it. Okay. And then did that work out for you? Well, it's okay. It could be better. What would you do to make it even better? I'm curious. What would you do to make it better? Well, it's just not bringing in the amount of revenue that I would like. Boom. I created doubt from this confident person. Yep, just tell me the price, man. I've done 3 or 4 of these already. I already know the kind of the scoop. He's trying to rush through it, but then I asked a couple questions and I created doubt in his approach, his current approach. Or I created doubt in his method that he's using. Or I created doubt in the system that he's using. Why did I do that for that type of person? Well, he was too confident. He was rushing through it. I got this down. I've done 4 or 5 of these in the past, man. We don't need to go through all this. Just tell me the price and what you guys deliver. And so by me creating doubt, he's kind of saying, you know what? I've tried a couple things in the past, but none of them really worked. Because if they really worked, I wouldn't be on this call. And it puts them in a better situation to be more willing to get my help later. So you're creating doubt. Everyone hold down the space bar and say, create some doubt. I want to hear you guys.
Create some doubt.
Create some doubt.
You got to create some doubt. You have to, especially for these people who are significant or strong, or I can do everything on my own, right? And that's where those questions come, where you can hear a Tony Robbins teach this from like 1980s, where he's saying, this person goes, no, everything sounds good to me. Everything's working fine. And he goes, well, what would you do to make it even better? Or a lot of people, sounds like things are going well for you. Is there anything you would change? Right? Cost of inaction and stuff. You could see people teaching this from 1980s. This has been around forever, but those type of questions, well, what would you do to make it even better? I mean, it's pretty good right now. Got it. And so if you could change anything, what would you change? Well, I'd change this. You find YouTube videos of people asking those questions, but it is important to ask those questions to create doubt for this certain type of person who feels too confident. Now, what about the other person? Because they buy in this window. What about the person who's scared, who's stuck, who sucks at everything? I've tried 4 or 5 things, but maybe I'm just not cut out for this. As a person who's scared and not cut out for this and feels stuck, is that person going to sign up with you? They will not, because they don't even trust themselves. How could they trust you? Because even if they thought maybe you've worked for other people, they're not going to think it works for themselves. Right? We talked about the trust trinity. There's 3 levels of trust you must master if you want to be the best. You have to have trust in you as a speaker. You have to have trust in your product. But most importantly, the thing most people miss is they need to trust themselves. So often people are too beat up, and a bunch of salespeople, it's sad how many salespeople do this. They try to stump the person too much and make them feel stupid, where you try to box them in this corner, and where now the person is either defensive, or you even can get their credit card because you make them feel stupid, but they ask for a refund, or they just don't feel like it's a good fit, but they did it anyways. You don't want to force people into it. You want them to be excited about joining. So you have to build those people up a little bit. The best way typically is the missing link. You help them figure out in their own mind that they were kind of set up to fail because they didn't have all the right pieces in place. In other words, they didn't have you. You were the missing link. Your product was the missing link. And so if you can help them kind of see that, where it's like, okay, so you kind of had that at this point, and then the next time you tried this, but you never really had everything at once with the right time. They're like, yeah, exactly. And you're kind of giving them that out a little bit. That allows them to say, you know what, it wasn't my fault. It was just, I was too swamped with all the changes in my life. I had too many things going on. There was all this other stuff. I was so focused on X, I forgot about Y. And by giving them that out, it actually still puts them in a more resourceful state that we talk about in NLP, putting them in a state where they feel like they are capable. Because if the person feels capable and confident, they're going to be more likely to take action. That's the state where people make decisions, not if they have a ton of self-doubt. That's why there's that window. So if they're too confident, you bring them in the window where they need your help. If they're not confident enough, you bring them in the window where they're confident that they could have success with you. Just like raise of hands, does that make sense, guys? How we're treating people differently, right? That's the personality selling. So that's step one of the personality selling, just to make it simple. Too confident, bring them down. Not confident up, bring them up. One quick NLP thing that's really powerful to think about is this idea of momentum. I always want people, and I'm going to give you guys a secret that I use right now. I always want people to feel momentum for that exact reason. If they feel stuck, I'm just going to keep looking around. I've been looking for 6 months. Nothing seems to ring perfect for me. You don't want those calls ever. So the way I prevent that from happening is I always make people feel momentum. And the word that I use throughout the call, I plant the seed a lot, is moving forward. So I say the word forward throughout the call. For example, they might say, yeah, I tried a couple things. Okay, and so you said before you were struggling with leads and you decided to move forward with trying a lead management company. What made you choose that company, by the way? You decided to move forward with that lead management company. And I'll just plant that seed. And a few minutes later, I might say, so when you move forward from X to Y, what kind of led to that transition? Okay, how did that work? And so by the time later, I'm making them feel like they've already figured a lot of stuff out. They have this momentum. They're already moving forward, because something that has momentum is going to keep having momentum. So I'm making them feel, okay, so that's good. So you figured a lot of this stuff out. A lot of people don't even know that yet. And so they are like, yeah, I figured this out. I've tried some things. I'm moving forward. And it kind of led me to where I'm at now, but they're still moving forward. And so typically at the end of the call, when I'm saying it, and so if you wanted to move forward, the next steps would send you X and Y. They already felt like they've been moving forward this whole time. It's an easy transition at the close. So if you wanted to move forward, the next steps would be, and they already feel like they are moving forward. So I plant those seeds early so it's easier at the end. Moving forward, right? So a couple other words that you might use: momentum, transition, or forward. I told you today we're going to go over metaphors. I'm going to tell you a metaphor about ducks in a row. And to jump ahead just a bit, it lands really well with that word forward. Because sometimes people will say, I want to get my ducks in a row before I move forward, right? And that's a lot of people say that. I want to get all my ducks in a row. But one of the things you can tell people is, we hear that a lot. Like, I want to get my ducks in a row. But the truth is, no ducks just stand in a row. That's not reality. There's not just 20 ducks standing in a row. But if one duck starts leading and starts moving forward, other ducks will follow. That's really what happens. But so I'm using that word again, that moving forward. So I planted all these seeds about them already moving forward. And I say ducks don't just stand in a row, but if one duck starts moving forward, the others will follow. And so I'll talk to you in a moment about why that works, why metaphors work, and how you can use them. But hopefully you guys are seeing that how this all kind of puts together. I'm planting seeds early in the call, and I see some head nods. I'm planting seeds early in the call so that they'll blossom later in the call. Make sense? Awesome. Cool stuff. All right, I got 7 things in the chat. Want to make sure I go through these. Boom, create some doubt. Awesome. Okay, cool. So be human, create doubt for the confident person. For the person who is not confident, you want them to feel like they do have momentum. Oftentimes you can do that with the missing link. So make them feel like something was missing. They had the wrong approach. They had the wrong mentor. They had the wrong system. They had the wrong method. Something was missing. They had the wrong combination in the past. And now they have the right amount of time with the right combination for success. So the missing link is very, very powerful. So drop that in the chat, the missing link. Cool. And again, we're just kind of recapping stuff, right? So we went over the framework. Now personality styling is stage 2. One is that buying pocket that we just talked about. And the second part is speaking to the type of person that is in front of you. So if this person again is trying to show you how intelligent they are, or I've done all the research, or they're trying to use big words and you're trying to sell them on some lead management, and they go, the site load speed is already bad. I already set up an API integration and now I have the pixel set up, but the UTM links aren't working because there's a parameter, and they're trying to show you that they've done some research. Don't try to stump them and show them that you know more than them. That doesn't help. Show them like this person is trying to show you that they're intelligent, that they've studied this stuff a little bit. Tell them like, oh, so you've done the research. I don't even need to convince you of a lot of this stuff. You'd be surprised how many people know nothing about this. And they're like, yeah, I do know a lot about this. That person's just more likely to sign up. There's no question on it. It's proven. Like that's just a better state for them to be in if they feel intelligent. And then just letting them know, like, it's actually refreshing to have someone know this stuff because now we can move a lot faster and I don't have to take my time like trying to explain this all to you. They're like, no, I mean, yeah, I mostly know this, that person's in a way better state to sign up. So that's that personality selling. If they're trying to show up in a certain way, think about that. How is this person on the other side of the call trying to show up to me? Are they trying to show me that they've been in this world already? They've been in all these other mentorship groups, and so they're very group oriented. Are they talking about the community a lot? Are they talking about being in proximity to other people? Are they talking about that a lot? So maybe they're like more of a group acceptance type of person, and that's their drivers. They want to be part of just the group. Or maybe they want to show you how, that they are so powerful and strong and significant. If that's the case, maybe we feed that a little bit, and so you have to have that balance of knowing the type of person you're talking to so that you can guide them, or another, like we talked about, I think on week 2, vilify the behavior you don't want them to take. If they're showing you how strong they are, you can compliment them. It's like, it's fun actually talking to you. You'd be surprised how many people are afraid to even talk about their goals, but they wonder why they're stuck. Well, you can't get help if you're afraid to talk about your goals. So at least you actually know your goals too. Not a lot of people even know those. And I'm saying that to this significant person. What am I saying? The guy who's strong is afraid of being seen as afraid. He has a fear of being seen as scared. So if I can say, you'd be surprised how many people are afraid to open up about their goals. That strong person is like, no, I'll open up all day. Why? Because I'm not afraid. It's crazy how well this works. That's exactly what you guys saw with that gentleman I shared a call with. He literally said, don't ask me any challenging questions. He literally said, I'll take the easy way out. That was the person that was in front of me. We speak to his needs a little bit. 90 seconds later, he's opening up because he's a totally different person. Yeah, Nikki says in the chat, it works really well with kids too. This is just the way our brains are set up, right? We're just playing the game of the way our brains work. And the good news is, Nikki, we are all just kids who grew up, right? And so you can use this stuff, speaking to their identities and their purpose to get them to change their behavior. You could use it on your kids. You can use it on others, realizing others are just kids who grew up. And you can also use it on yourself, which is really cool. So this stuff is way more than just sales to get closing ratio. It could help you be a better human as well, but fun stuff. Okay, cool. So now we're going to go into, I wanted to do that recap. Hopefully these reminders are important and helpful. I want to do that recap because it all leads to metaphor selling, analogy selling, story selling. And we're going to go over some of that today. If you guys are ready for it, drop in the chat, give me the goods. All right, I need about 5 more, give me the goods. There's more people in the room. All right, there we go. There they are. We're all here now. Awesome. So there's 3 things I'm going to go over with you guys around this, and they all, I think, are important, and they all go hand in hand. And so in discussing this with Eli, he's by the way stuck on a flight to London that got delayed from London back home. So he will be back Wednesday. But in talking to him about like the way this actually shows up, we've seen some bad teachers try to teach story selling, and it just doesn't translate realistically on a one-on-one sales call. Most story selling is done when you speak one to many. And Eli's one of the best in the world at doing that, but translating that full on 10-minute story into, maybe a 30-second, 60-second bit on a sales call is a challenge for most coaches. We haven't seen many people do it well. And when we were explaining to each other our versions of how we can show you guys, one of the things we talked about is it's not just story selling. Sometimes it's just dropping a metaphor, and sometimes it's dropping a bit or just like a little phrase that does all the work for you. And so for you to really understand all of this, there's three things we want to go over. What are bits and how you could create your own bit or little phrase that's catchy and solves all the problems. What are some metaphors? When you use those metaphors, exact examples. I'm going to give you about 15 metaphors that I've used on calls today. And then after that, story selling and putting it all together in the form of a story. And that's when you can do some embedded commands, or you can just tell a story to help them visualize it. So there's some emotion involved, and then plant that same analogy or story. So that's what we're going to go over today. I think one quick thing that I would like to talk about is creating your own bits. And so all that, and it's really easy when we go over it, once I show you guys the structure of it, but all that means to the listener, when they hear someone do a bit, is they go, oh, that person in front of me spent some time to explain things simply. A bit is something simple and it's repeatable. In other words, a bit is something that's memorable. For example, like you guys have heard me and Eli say, stop selling your features and start selling their future. And I see a couple of people mouth it right now, future, right? It's memorable. The biggest mistake people make in sales when they're presenting their offer is they focus too much on the features. Stop selling the features and start selling their future. People buy a better future. That's a little bit. It has a ring to it. It's memorable. It's tight. And we've seen other people repeat it a lot. That's how we know it works. So one thing that's really powerful, and I love this little phrase, is it's not just about what they hear, it's about what they repeat. It's really powerful, right? Because if we're talking about branding and making your offer bigger than just a product, making it a better future or making it this bigger thing, it helps to have like these bits. Because really what we're trying to do is this: we want people to sing our song, right? Whether it's your own service, whether it's your own results, whether it's your own, what your company stands for, whether it's your mission, we want people singing that song. Would you guys agree? You want people singing your song, right? But they cannot sing your song unless they know the words. So you have to be able to say things in a way that's tight. And so I'll give you guys a quick example of or some tools that you guys can create your own. One quick example that we used recently, and now this again is kind of went all over in this program. One of our friends who we all help do sales with, his name is Chase. He has a product that helps people work on their own confidence, understand their communication better, and influence people. So it's like persuasion selling, similar to NLP for sales, but he does it more from like the neuroscience background. Better communication is a happier world. So we just made a quick bit for him, and we just started telling people it's the fastest tool for the happiest world. And every time we do it, we're like, oh, that's good. And you've seen people write it down, like it's the fastest tool for the happiest world. It's just a quick little bit. It sounds good and people will repeat it. So having those things is really powerful. You've heard the whole Einstein thing. Like if you don't understand something complex well enough to explain it simply, you do not understand it. So spend a little time to understand how to explain whatever you sell more simply. It's not about what people hear, it's about what they repeat, right? So real quick, I wanted to give you guys this little technique that could be really helpful. every time there's a bit, because I'm going to give you guys like 15 examples of metaphors in just a moment, and you could absolutely borrow some of these metaphors. You can absolutely use some of this, but you're kind of singing someone else's song. It'd be cool if we just show you how the structure works so you can create your own. And so if you think about the Zig Ziglar quote, I don't know, who knows if he even created it originally, right? But a lot of people might have taken it, but he has that quote: sales isn't something you do to someone. Sales is something you do for someone, right? And I see you guys mouthing it, right? That means it worked if you guys remembered it, right? Sales isn't something you do to someone. Sales is something you do for someone. So there's a structure to that. The structure of that is A is not B, sales is not this, sales is that. So the structure is A is not B, A is C. Super simple. But if you just start noticing the form, the structure of these things, you'll be able to create your own. That is really, this could be the best course you ever went through if you learn this skill, by the way. That's the only reason we're doing it. So many people just want the tactic. Just give me the 13. I have my pen ready, Eli. Give me the 13 metaphors. I'm going to choose my top 3. I'm going to close a couple more people and I'll call it success. We'll shake hands at the end. Like, that's all good. That's going to work for a lot of you, but the best version is creating your own. So I see some smiles. It must land because you guys want these metaphors, right? But check this out. A is not B, A is C. Sales isn't something you do for someone. Sales is something you do. Sales is not something you do to someone. Sales is something you do for someone. So you could use that kind of same structure. A is not B, A is C, and create whatever you want. Sales is not about setting a trap where people will get stuck in. Sales is about guiding someone to a future that they actually want. It's still the same structure, right? And so the better you get at understanding the structures, the more likely you'll be able to speak in a way that's repeatable. I heard the Carl Jung quote recently. It's so hard to figure out where quotes come from. You search this and it also shows Mark Twain. But there's a really powerful quote, profound quote, that says, the person who does not read has no advantages of the person who cannot read. The person who does not read has no advantages over the person who cannot read, which is pretty much telling people they need to fulfill their potential, right? It doesn't matter if you have the ability to save 1 million lives. If you're not saving 1 million lives, it doesn't matter. You have the same disadvantages of the person who cannot do that, right? So now that we know that structure, one of our friends was about to speak on stage and she was selling travel. And so we just said the same thing. Like, the person who does not travel has the same disadvantages as the person who cannot travel, right? She's trying to break the belief around, it's not about just, reading books all day long. It's about having experiences, having a better quality of time. So we added in for her, it's not about what you know, it's about where you go. It's those silly little simple things that are actually memorable. And people remember it. And they come up to her after and told her it was a great speech. She got invited to write a column in a magazine for travel that she was like super proud to be in, using these bits, right? So you want to be repeatable. You want to be memorable. So drop that in the chat, and now I'll give you guys a bunch of memorable metaphors. Drop it in the chat, be memorable. Now there's a few things. It's not just using quotes that are catchy. You don't want to just use cheesy quotes that rhyme, but they also need to be real, and you also need to connect with people, right? Because we talked about the difference between having a surface level sales call and having a transformational level sales call. If it's transformational, they will remember you, right? So you have to try to be transformational. And here's something really exciting about just the way the brain works. We talked about NLP having like, it's not just that you'll make more X, but you'll even do more Y. It's not just that you'll make more sales using this technique, but more importantly, you can help more people if you create your own bits. That's me using that on you guys right now, right? It's not just that you'll close more people, but more importantly, you'll help more people and actually change more lives if you work on creating your own bits. So what I'm doing there is I'm saying it's not just X making more money, but it's Y. You'll help more people. If you agree that you'll be able to help more people by doing whatever I'm suggesting, your brain automatically will probably autocomplete that you also make more money. That same way that the brain works that way, it kind of auto-completes. Like if you agreed with that last thing, your brain's going to agree with those first couple things. You can use metaphors in the same way. Meaning, if you're making a point and then you drop a metaphor and they agree, like a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and they go, that makes sense, that's true. The brain kind of auto-completes that original concept is also true. It's a little magic trick, works really well. That's why so many great speakers would often speak in analogies or stories. It's like you're a sheep against the lion, right? And all those things, right? Because it auto-completes and you go, oh yeah, that would be the case. And if you believe it, the metaphor, it supports it, right? So it all comes down to trust, right? People need to trust what you're saying. You're building a case for your argument. That's what sales is. You're building a case for your side of the story. And so when we hear a concept or an argument that is supported, and so listen to this, by an external and supporting metaphor, our brain gives that original concept more trust. And it allows the metaphor to act as evidence. Right? So our brains are doing something at all times. We're consistently looking for consistency. That's what we do. Our brains are looking for more things to support our way of seeing the world. So if you have a point that's almost made and you lock them in with a metaphor, it locks in the point. Right? Just like a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And so if someone is telling you on a call, you know, things are going pretty well, it's just the main thing is we just need leads. How do you insert a chain is only as strong as its weakest link? You could just drop it and hope it lands, but I like to connect it a little bit. So here's how I would connect it. They just said, yeah, everything's going well. Awesome product, amazing sales team. We just need more leads. And it's like, totally makes sense. And at least you guys have identified it. You know, I've been lucky enough to have a mentor, and my mentor has a mentor. Turns out every good coach has a bunch of coaches too. And one of the things they told me is the only thing you should do in your business is identify your bottlenecks and focus on your bottlenecks. I remember my coach actually told me, if you're focused on anything other than your bottlenecks, you're actually hurting your company. Right? I mean, it makes sense, right? A chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So if that's where the big hole in the bucket is, it makes sense to plug that first. But identifying it is often the hard part. It sounds like you already know what you're looking for. I guess for me, and then I can move on to the next question. I guess for me, it might be good for me to know, at what point did you realize leads was kind of the biggest problem for you? Or whatever the next part of the framework is. But can you see how I'm like using his words, connecting it, and then dropping that metaphor to support it? Just raise of hands. I could see most of you raise of hands. Do you guys kind of see that? If that's super clear, drop a 1 in the chat. If that's not clear at all, drop a 2. Just want to make sure this is clear for y'all. Oh, lots of 1s. Llewellyn hit 6 figures of 1s. It's pretty good. Beautiful. Awesome. 6 times the wealth. That's right. I love it. Okay, cool. So another one that we used a lot, and there's so many versions of these, right? And so I just gave you 2, right? I said a chain is not as strong as is only as strong as its weakest link. And then I talked about fixing the hole of a bucket. It still kind of serves the same point. The next one, you can't give something that you don't have, right? You can't give $1 if you don't have $1. You can replace dollar with anything and make it yours, right? But you can't give $1 if you don't have $1. You can't give that which you don't possess. That's obvious, right? And so if people are saying, I want to show up, you know, less stress so I can make sure my family is happy. You can't give happiness if you don't have happiness. You can't give energy if you don't have energy. That's kind of obvious. Now, you could say you can't give $1 if you don't have $1. You can say the more energy you have, the more energy you can give, the more frame that you like talked about in NLP. You could say you can't pour water from an empty cup. You can't draw water from an empty well. Start to notice the patterns here. But all you're doing is helping someone realize that if they don't have something, they can't give something. So that's happens all the time. You start finding it in almost all your sales calls that people are looking for something more because they want to contribute back to the world. And you can drop in that metaphor right there. The next part, because I do have a bunch more metaphors I want to go over, but we told you those bits, they all kind of come together where you're using a metaphor or you one of your own bits, or you're doing these short form stories. You can use a short form story in that case too. Now, I don't like to do these really long. Do you mind if I tell you a story? And they go like, oh, now it's story time. He's doing something. I don't do too much of this because it seems not genuine for me, but I do agreement mode. You guys know I do a lot of agreement modes where I'll be like, yeah, exactly like, and then I'll jump into something. I do that. It sounds a lot more natural to me. And so I have these short form stories. So say that was the case. Someone says, you know, I want to have more energy so I can give more energy for my family, or that same idea of the more I have, the more I can give. You can't give $1 if you don't have $1. I might say something, and this is true. I was on a flight to San Diego just 3 days ago, and it was interesting. They do the same thing. The stewardess literally says, in case of emergency, oxygen mask will come down. Put the oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on other people. You guys have heard that before, but this is actually true. I have a 1-year-old, so I'm holding my 1-year-old. They come up a second time after they told the whole plane and specifically go to the person that has the baby on their lap. And they go, sir, in case of an emergency, you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself before putting it on your baby. Do you understand that? That's a 100% true thing. It happened like the last 6 flights I've been on. It's crazy. That's how serious they are about it, but they know the truth. You can't save other people unless you save yourself, right? You can't help other people unless you're first helping yourself. And even with your family, if you have 5% energy, are you going to be able to give 100% energy? Of course not. It just doesn't make sense. So that's why it's so important to work on yourself first so that you can help others. I mean, you can't give $1 if you don't have $1, right? So you can see now, you can kind of start combining these. Is this helpful for you guys? You guys like it? Is this good stuff? You like it? Right? So you can see that, right? And now you could have put anything from there. You could have used, can't give $1 if you don't have $1. You could have said you can't draw water from an empty well, and you can't draw energy if you only have 5%. I mean, that's obvious, but you'd be surprised how many people are just burning themselves to the ground without working on themselves. And so I love the fact that you're at least open for some support. Actually, it's probably good for me to ask, at what point did you even think you might be open to looking at getting some support? And now if you ask that, what are they going to say? Here's why I want support. I've been always wanting support. I just didn't have the time. They're going to start proving to you why they want support, because you just showed them how important it is through a metaphor to get support. That's really the power of metaphors, because not only does it do this, and I haven't said this yet, but a metaphor, it covers the full sensory experience because they will translate it themselves. Where if you're trying to hope that they know exactly what you're saying using your own words, you're hoping that it lands. If you speak in a metaphor and that metaphor lands, they translate what that leaky bucket means to themselves. They translate what that broken chain means to themselves. They translate what, giving energy might mean one thing to you, and it might mean something totally different to them. But when you say you can't pour water from an empty cup and you're only operating at 3% energy, like you said, how are you going to give 100% to others? That means more to them because they're translating it. So you're covering a more full sensory experience. The other beautiful part about using metaphors is it's going to land in a way that you just can't possibly guess, right? Because you don't know their world. You don't know what all that stuff means. So allowing them to translate it is really powerful. So let's go over a couple more metaphors that you might want to use. One thing that I've seen people say during the trigger moment, I like to tell you guys where I put this. Of course, you could use it other ways, but I'll often put one after the trigger moment where I'm asking them something along the lines like, okay, so has this kind of been a stack of reasons, or is there something recently where you're like, okay, maybe I might need to take a look at some other options? And they're like, yeah, I mean, the other day, I'm supposed to be in this leadership position at work. My boss is all over me. I don't know how to handle the situation because I can't speak clearly with them because I'm like afraid to speak up. And I know that there's something like holding me back from speaking up to my boss. It's just something's missing. They might be saying that's their big problem. And I like this one. So, okay. So it was that kind of that moment where you're like, okay, I got to draw a line in the sand and, you know, enough is enough. I kind of need to take a look at this. And he's like, yeah, exactly. I just say, so we're just going to draw a line in the sand right there because enough is enough. Is that kind of what happened? They're like, exactly. It's so small, but the moment that their brain now visualizes again, there's an emotion attached to it. It means more than just words now, right? The other one you've heard a lot. I say it a lot because it's true. Sometimes it's just those small things that make a big difference, right? Small hinges swing big doors. Really powerful metaphor. The moment you say that to someone where they go, let's do the leads thing. So we talked about earlier. I have a problem with leads. My lead nurture is amazing. My sales are off the chain. You know, my service is incredible. My retention is amazing. I have problems with leads. Okay, so it's just that one thing that you're looking to fix. Yeah, everything else is good. Yeah, sometimes that tip of the arrow is like the most important part, right? That one little thing makes a huge difference. Like it's true when they say, you know, small hinges swing big doors. For you though, when you say you wanted to work on leads, is this kind of a newer goal or has this been something you've been wanting to do for a while? I'm just making stuff up, but you guys can see how I can translate these things right back into a call. Bunch of a mouse running on a wheel, not getting anywhere. The one people want their ducks in a row. Talk to you about that. That's not reality. There's no ducks that just stand in a row. But when one duck starts leading, other ducks will follow. So sometimes it takes taking that step forward to get momentum so that you can get where you want to go. That's the ducks in a row one. I use that a lot. I've used that a lot. If someone talks about potentially looking at for support, potentially looking for a mentor, potentially looking for a coach, you might say in agreement mode, 1,000%. Like I think every good coach has a coach, and you go farther and faster with support. Like if your goal is to cross a frozen lake, obviously you want to go with someone who's already crossed the lake, right? Doing it on your own is just pretty idiotic, I think. But one thing would be really powerful to do, boom, and you just move on to the next thing, right? If you're going to cross a frozen lake, definitely walk where there's been footsteps, right? That's why it's so important to have a coach. It's just not going to help you get there faster. It's going to prevent a lot of disasters from happening because they've been there. You could drop in a short story now. Now it's funny, like those things are really important. I'm glad that I don't have to convince you of like the power of like mentorship, because it's interesting. Like there's good coaches for certain things. And one thing we always say at our company is let the specialists do what they specialize in. Right? You are busy running a company and being a mentor. Doesn't make sense for you to be planning pixels and working on leads. Insert whatever you want, whatever your product is. I'm just using that as an example. Let the specialists do what they specialize. You're so busy running a company, motivating a team and putting out good products. You shouldn't be focused on X, Y, and Z. You could just drop that right there. Right? And so it's like, one of the things that I learned is you have to learn from the specialists. Like my mom, love her to death. She taught me so many things in life, but obviously I wouldn't be here without her. She absolutely, like, I am who I am because of my mom. But one thing she couldn't teach me is how to make 6 figures a month, because she's never done it. You can't lead where you have not went, right? She can't get me there. Amazing person. She just doesn't know the steps to get me there. Right. So that's another short form kind of story you can kind of insert to give the same exact outcome that a metaphor might do. All right, you guys want some more? Drop spacebar, say, give me some more. I want to make sure I'm alive. Give me some more.
Give me more.
Give me some more, please.
It's not enough. Come on, a couple more people. Give me some more.
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 There we go.
More.
There we go. Now,
More.
woo, so much more fun. Look at
Give
that.
me more.
There we go. There we go. So even like Auntie, I just saw her voice pop up. When you learn the structure of these things, you can start creating your own. It helps to read. It helps to read and learn from others. But Auntie sells relationships, right? She's in an amazing relationship. And so previously, she probably wasn't in the best relationship. She learned skills on how to find a good man and how to develop those relationships. And now she teaches other women how to have what she has, the knowledge of getting a great man. And so if you can have those bits that land, like there is like that bit or a common thing, I forgot who originally said it, but it's like the greatest wealth is your insert whatever you want, physical health. The greatest wealth is your relationships health. And so one of the things we teach about, boom, right there. If she says that to someone on a sales call and they're selling relationships, right? And the person goes, yeah, I think it could have been a little bit of self-sabotage. Yep, she just dropped it in the chat right there. Could have been a little self-sabotage. Sometimes I psych myself out. And so I don't want to get hurt. So I like end a relationship before it grows into something bigger. And I know I need to work on myself. And it's like, and that really is one of the most, you could say this on a call. That is one of the most important things. And I'm glad you kind of have that position. Like relationships are more important than anything. That's what life's about. Like your quality of time with the people you love. That's why one of the things we always say in our program is the greatest wealth is your relationships health, because that's what is most important. When you say those things, like here's the way our culture, our company looks at things, and it's simple like that, it adds a ton of authority to Antia or a ton of trust. Right, so there it is in the chat. The greatest wealth is your relationships health. Boom. I'm just reading a couple of chats. Okay, cool. So the story selling comes in two ways. Those short forms that I was just giving you an example, like my mom, boom, 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 right? Or I was on a plane, boom, boom, boom. Those are typically the way I would do it. You could use them where you have a full story, meaning there's like, we teach 7 steps to like a perfect rags to riches story. And I'll give you guys those 7 steps too. You could use them, but I'll be honest with you guys. I've only used it a couple times when it's just come up like really obvious where people are asking a little bit more about me. And then I've told that a little bit, but it's not needed. It's really cool when you just do the ones I showed you, like those short form, making a point, locking in a concept. Like my mom doesn't know the steps, so she can't teach me how to make 6 figures a month. I had to learn that from someone else. It's not that she's a bad person. She just didn't know how. You have to go from someone who knows how. Let the specialist do what they specialize in. Right? Like saying that goes really far. And that's really all you need to do. You don't need to tell a full story, but it does gain a lot of trust, especially if you're doing either VSLs. Maybe they watch a short story about you before they get on a call with you. If you're selling your own product, maybe you're doing Facebook Lives. Maybe you have a welcome video on your Facebook group, right? There's tons of spots that you might want to insert your story. So I will give you guys the form, the flow, the framework of a good story right now. It's important to know, if you guys have studied storytelling a lot, by the way, that there's a bunch of different types of story plots. There is like, the rags to riches, which is really good for what we do, where it's like I was 1.0 and now I'm 2.0. There is like, the voyage and return. There's a reluctant hero. There's all these different types of stories that you could tell, but they don't really translate well into a conversation on a sales call, a consultation. It wouldn't make sense. Really what you want to do is just the rags to riches. That's really the best one, where it's like, I was here and then I got to here. The bridge that got you there was either the product that you're selling or your evolution to create the product. Meaning if you're selling your own product, you're talking about, here's who I was, I figured this thing out, and now I'm here. That's a great story. Again, here's where I was, here's all my struggles, here's the situation, here's the conflict. I made some choices, took this approach, and then I evolved into this new person. Now I'm dedicating my life to help others like you. That's an amazing story if it's your own product. The other version, similar, because you guys want to sell kind of like the rags to riches story. They need to know this. They need to know, oh, for example, it's like Annette is in front of you telling a story. You need to know Annette has went through what I went through. She has felt some of the feelings that I'm currently feeling. but she has navigated her way out. She's crossed that frozen lake and she knows what's on the other side, and she could guide me there too. Because anytime you tell a story, and this is interesting, things go into one of two buckets. Bucket number one, they go, that's just like me. Like I could totally relate to that. I'm feeling the same things she was feeling. That's where you want them to go, right? Bucket number one. Or they go to bucket number two, which is who cares? What does that have to do with me? Like, why are you even telling this story? Yeah, that's your story. Good for you, not for me. So you don't want that. And so when you tell a story, this is kind of like this shocking news, but when you tell a story, your story is not about you. Your story is about them, right? So you have to say it in a way that lands for them. And so I can give you guys that structure really quickly. And that will mean that I've done my job today. Went over bits, how you can create your bits, went over examples of metaphors, and then gave you guys examples of how you tell stories. Again, there's two ways to tell stories. Short form, like I gave you guys examples, that's normally the way I do it. Or a little bit longer form. This could be closer to a 10-minute story. And this is using the story selling system. So first, I'm going to have you guys write this in the chat. And then after, I'll share a picture. 7 steps. And it could be a 7-sentence story, by the way. It does not need to be a long story. Number 1, drop in the first one. Everyone write in situation in the chat. Situation, which in other words, the start, the origin. How did you get started? Where were you at the beginning of your story? Everyone write situation. Good. Number 2, friction. Meaning like the conflict, the problem. No, there's no good story unless there's a problem that you overcame. To help understand the weight of that friction, of that problem, of that conflict, the next step is your desire or your aspiration, your actual goal, right? So the bigger that is of where you're currently at, your problem state from your aspiration, the more they're going to feel your story. So you got to have the desire or the aspiration. Check it out in the chat. Next is your approach. In the chat, after that, you transition into this epiphany moment, this realization. Coming towards the end is your evolution. You came out of this struggle with this new version of yourself, this transformation, this 2.0 version of Kathy. Now, here's who I am. Here's what I learned about life. Here's what I learned about this. Here's how this product changed my life, XYZ. That's your 2.0 version, but you're not done. A good rags to riches story ends not just with you being this amazing person, the superhero. It ends with your new dedication, your new mission. So now that I've learned all these, techniques, I've dedicated my life to helping others with XYZ. Right? When you have that flow, you could be much more powerful, because so many times we hear people's stories and they're all over the place. They're going over details that have nothing to do with it. If you just write one or two sentences for each of those areas, you have a lot better rags to riches type of story. All right, so there's a lot there. I went over a lot of different options. I promised I'd give you about 15 different metaphors, and I think I went over about 11 of them. So I'm going to give you a couple more, and then I want to hear which ones stood out to you, which metaphors you liked, which stories are powerful, what you guys want to start using, any aha moments, any takeaways, any things that you feel is helpful for others. A plant cannot grow without water, right? Just if they're saying like, yeah, I'm just looking for some other approaches and some more guidance on what I could do. I'm just looking for different steps, right? Yeah, makes sense. Plant can't grow without water. So everyone always needs, a second pair of eyes looking at things to see if we can help you, right? The other one is like a fly stuck in a window. That's an interesting one where people are using the wrong approach. I don't like to use aggressive metaphors that could potentially make the person feel like you're calling them a fly. So instead, I use it about myself. So I'll say, yeah, it's funny. Like, it's one of those things I was always trying to, before I ever joined programs, and this is so true. Like with me, I thought I was like an expert at funnel hacking. I would look at some coach, see what they do, try to reverse engineer it by looking at the code on their website or looking at enough testimonials and back searching, and I'd get like 10% of it, but I was kind of like a fly looking through the window, trying to do trying to get to where I wanted to go but I couldn't do it correctly. And the truth is 10 feet away, there was a door. Could have just flown out the door, but I was taking the wrong approach. Just didn't know what I didn't know. And it's so helpful sometimes just having a coach right there by your side, holding your hand through the process if they've done it themselves. So you see how I'm kind of attacking myself a little bit. And it still gets them to say, that's just like me. It's the same, bucket that I want them to go through without saying, you're a stinky fly. People don't really like that. It's weird. Okay, cool. When you're talking about perspective, right? We talked about you find what you look for. One thing you can say is like, and it's totally true. So many times in life, like one person can get a script and they could all of a sudden double, triple their income, triple their revenue, triple their impact. The other person can have the same script, but it just doesn't work because they don't believe it works, right? You're going to find what you look for. And that's really what it is. It's like who you are, right? The same wind that will kill a match is the same wind that could ignite a forest fire. It's up to you on how you react to things. Right, there's another one right there. And another one is like, if you don't, and so many people, like they know they should do it. They know they should step out. But it's just a big fear people have. They have a fear of failure. Like one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was don't die in your nest. Right? You can have all the comfort of your own home, but you're never actually going to have success unless you're willing to reach out and try to help people. Right? So don't die in the crib. Actually be out there trying to make a difference. Yes, you might fail, but the person who has failed is the person who's going to have success. That's just obvious. That's the way it works. So I'm throwing a bunch together there, but hopefully this is helpful. All right. We hit over 60 minutes, 4 minutes past my time. I must have got excited, but I want to hear from you guys. What are some things that stand out, some aha moments, some takeaways? That was a lot of bits today. I want to give a lot of bits, but I also wanted to give the principles behind why the bits work so that you guys can make your own. But let's hear from you guys. It's helpful for other people to hear you and hear your voice instead of just me talking. So hopefully that was helpful. I see in the chat, people say they were looking forward to the replay. Good stuff. All right. Who has some takeaways from today? Mr. Aaron Seaton, anything that stands out to you? Anything that you thought was helpful? Any takeaways from you?
What's up? As always, super powerful, man. Yeah, I think the concept of the metaphor, selling through using metaphors and bits and reframes.
Yes.
They're so good because they allow someone to ultimately see the world the same way you do. And so when they're looking through the lens the same way, there's that congruency. And when you have that level of congruency, at the end of the call, they're saying to themselves, yes, this person sees the world the same way I do. They think like I think. So it increases the likelihood that they're going to take the next step, which is taking action. So that was really good.
And by the way, Aaron is using this stuff already. He's been one of our clients for a while. He has a couple businesses in the fitness industry. He did over $500,000 last year just online, not including his gyms, with about 90% profit. And Aaron closed someone last week using these metaphors and these reframes, these identity selling. He closed someone for $7,500 for 12 weeks of fitness training, 0 gym, 0 personal training. It's just an app that the person gets. So it's no extra work for Aaron, and he's charging people $7,500. When you hear stories like that, it makes you kind of question your own prices, right? But the cool thing is Aaron knows the truth. It's not about the price, right? It is not about the price. There's intrinsic value and there's perceived value. Aaron has a 90% retention rate of people paying him $6,000 to $7,500 for 12 weeks of a fitness app. All they get is an app on their phone. That's all they get for 12 weeks. And they pay $6,000 to $7,000 and they love it because of the way he communicates what it's going to do for their future. And then it actually works, right? So just letting you guys know, we see so many people that are like, I'm struggling to, I'll meet with these people 3 times a week. It's a lot of your time. I'll meet with them 5 days a week for 6 months, training on confidence and mindset, and you're charging like $3,000 or $4,000. Aaron's sending people a password for $7,000 and they're loving it. He's changing their lives, right? And it's all just because of his communication skills and his sales skills that he's been working on. So Aaron, you're a beast. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, man, for sure.
Eric, you were up.
Actually, it's more of a question. Earlier, you did something, and I don't know if it was on purpose or not, that you used misdirection in your answer. So you basically said, oh yeah, 100%. You threw in what you wanted that person to believe, and then you went back onto that original track of thought. And I can't remember exactly how you did it. I was wondering if you could just refresh my memory. So.
The technique, I know what you're talking about. I don't know the part you're talking about specifically, but just in general, telling people no typically isn't the right thing to say.
Mhm.
So if someone is like, so is this one of those things that, and they might be wrong, is this one of those things that it's this and that? And I'll be like, yeah, so really what it is. And then I'll just tell them what it is.
Mhm.
Because if I say no, they're going to start to defend why they were wrong in their brain, and their brain's thinking about that instead of thinking about my words.
Right.
Right. So that might be what you're talking about, but it's just in general, it's better to say, yeah, so here's a cool way to look at it. And this might be helpful, you know, and then you tell them what it really is.
Yeah.
Instead of saying like, no, and they're like, dang it, I failed.
Mhm.
Yeah. The same idea of just trying to use the words more like and instead of buts idea. Marco, you're up.
One thing I like about the metaphors is you can add it in with the perceptual positions that we've already learned as well. So that was pretty cool. And then also I wanted to, I guess, get your ideas on the congruency frame. You know how they use for being B2B, like, yeah, if you're a salesperson, they got to show up like one. How would you do that for, an ROI offer for selling Amazon? Of course, you know, if they're an employee, they've never had a business before. So how are they going to show up for something they've, you know, because obviously if you're consistent, then your income is going to be consistent because the business relies on you, is what I kind of say. But like, how would you put that in a better way?
Yeah. So what Marco's asking is like for his specific product, if they're not actually like business owners, how do you still get them to have that frame? If we step back, NLP chunking up, it's more, instead of the words, it's more important, the frame, that they're a decision maker and they're taking ownership, right? That's what a business owner would do, but that's what everyone should do. Everyone should take ownership, right? So you can still get that outcome, but just in a slightly different way. So you could tell like a quick mini version of that 7-step story where it's like, yeah, here's where I was struggling, trying to find, you know, a way to bring in some passive income for myself, problem. And then I took this approach. And so I started researching and I found BJKU, which is a company Marco works for. I found this and it was really cool because I saw all these reviews, but just the way I worked was like, I had some doubt. And so I just like, is this all real stuff? And so I never actually moved on it. And then it got to the point where I was at my previous job and I just realized the amount of money I'm bringing in now, I can never get to my goals. And I knew no one was coming to save me. So I was like, I need to do something and take action for myself, but it wasn't easy. But all I decided to do was reach out. And so now 6 months later, I made X amount of money. I've done this, I've done that. Tell your story. And so now I've dedicated my life to just telling more people about this gold rush opportunity that I truly believe in, because it's a good fit from a lot of people. And so I guess for me to figure out if it's a good fit for you, a good question for me to ask would be, and then you're back on the call. So what I've done there is I inserted a small part of that story as a quick story, but no one's coming to save you. You need to take ownership yourself to get out of the situation you're in. And so that's how even though you were an employee and you made a change yourself. You see it? Getting head nods. Marco, hop off mute.
No, that's perfect, man.
Okay.
I love it.
Awesome. Sometimes I'll watch the replays. I'm like, I wasn't talking to myself, was I? I couldn't have. There's other people, I swear. Okay, cool. Oliver, you are up, sir.
Yo. So yeah, one big thing, and you mentioned this a few weeks ago, and I've been using it a lot, which is, was there one big event that happened that made you feel this way, or was it like a multiple events? And I use that so much because I realized when you get that event, you can just always go back to that, right? You can always use that in your follow-up, and that's so key. And I've like been using that pretty much every single call, and it's really made a big difference. But then even, I don't know if you said it before, but it's something that I didn't know, which is that where you drew the line, enough is enough. And I just know that that's just going to make it even more powerful, because then they're already saying, yeah, this is where I drew the line. And it's just after that point, it just makes logical sense.
Yeah.
And that means, well, you drew the line. So, let's get started with it now, essentially is what it is. It's telling them the importance of making a change, right? And then you also obviously just get like, how long has it happened? That's more of an impact. And because that's one big thing I really need to work on is the urgency. And this is just making it a lot easier. So big on that.
That's huge that you're actually, you're using that already. Yeah, the trigger moment is just crucial because it makes so much, it inherently, when it works, means that there is emotion, right? Because they're triggering a memory in their brain. So there's emotion. And then what Oliver's doing really well there is he's getting that emotion out of them. And the cool part about saying like, okay, so sort of drew a line in the sand and said enough was enough kind of thing. They're like, yeah. Just by you doing that, there's so much to go into this whole idea of, it's just too much to have a full psychology class, right? But there's almost like this idea of two identities, the old me and the new me, right? The person on this side of the line and the person on the other side of the line, right? And there's all these different ways you can do this in hypnosis and in NLP and psychology, where you have them put on this new uniform, or you have them see themselves differently. But just the idea of them crossing a visible in their brain line in the sand where they said enough is enough, just that alone means like that there's two parts of my life, the part where I was there and the part where I had this realization, the next part, right? And so doing little things like that could be helpful. Again, success comes from figuring out what you don't want to happen and then working your way backwards. So everyone listening, think about this. Don't be weird about it. Make it quick, make it short, but just like kind of like, okay, so it's kind of like one of those moments where enough is enough, kind of draw a line in the sand type of thing. They're like, yeah, every time they're like, right. Because it's just like a soft draw a line in the sand type of thing. But if you're like, so was that the moment you closed your eyes, you visualized your toe drawing a line through that sand? And it's just like, oh, that's kind of weird. So don't make it like, just make it like, keep that speed up and that pace that we talk about. And then add in little things like kind of thing. Is it kind of like one of those things? They're going to say yes. It's a quick, small tip, because I've seen people try to implement some of these, but it just sounds a little scripted. Make it flow, right? But awesome stuff, Oliver. Really good stuff. Any other aha moments, takeaways, anything else at all?
I jump in with a question as well on that. Because one thing I'm noticing is that I have a tendency to kind of make a little bit high pressure when I go in with the assumptions. And so I was wondering, like, how would you do that with that shows this? I don't know. I seem to sense that that's what I'm doing, and I'm trying to take that away from a lot of the. I can't remember which week it was, and I can't even remember some of the examples. But basically, the assumptions and telling them the beliefs that they should have about what they've done. So this shows that you're very committed, stuff like that. You remember which training that is. I found that I've been a bit high pressure and it's coming off that way. Do you have any tips about decreasing that?
I do. I have tips about decreasing it, but the truth is we'd have to listen to your actual calls to give you the real advice on it. But just in general, here's a mistake I've seen some people make. And I'm hoping that we've been really clear on just not making it too on the nose, where it's like, I'm so happy. Look at you, you big decision maker, you like saying stuff. Don't do that. Like it's just weird. And so like, I really don't even use the word, like, I don't think I ever say the word decision maker, where I'm like, oh, look at you, a big entrepreneur and a decision maker. Like I would never say that, right? But I just talk about little things. So like when you decided to move forward on that, what made you make that decision? I'm curious. Like, it's more that. When you decided to join a program in the past, what kind of led you to that? Just so I know. It's that. I'm labeling that they've made this decision, all these decisions in the past, and just because their brain's like, I make decisions, it's going to be easier. I'm dropping in the word forward a lot, so they're moving forward with their decisions, and it's just little subtle things like that is going to be a lot more powerful and impactful than the moment they go, oh, he's like doing like some weird technique or something. I don't know what it was, but that was off, right? A technique shown is a technique blown. They could see the handkerchief hanging out of the sleeve, no longer works. So I don't know exactly what's happening, Oliver, but just try to lean out. I wouldn't use words like decision maker and stuff like that. Just think of the frame of someone who makes decision and takes ownership and use that. Right. Like an example.
I think you've.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think you said it, which is pretty much just instead of saying like, oh, well, that's, really underplaying it. So saying the words, but making it in a very minor form. I think that's what you're saying. So instead of, wow, that really shows that you're a decision maker, that really shows you're really committed. It's like, wow, that shows you're committed, right? Just kind of low tonality, but
Yeah.
also in the words, don't use very and stuff like that. I think that's another stuff.
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, it just don't put it too hard on the nose. One thing is just even outside of using the words is just like talking about where they stand. So like if it's a dad oftentimes and they're like, what do you think kind of caused this in the first place? And they're like, just been swamped, man. I was doing this at the time and the kids had this and I was doing 2 jobs. And then I'll say something along the lines like, no, it totally makes sense. Like a lot of times I talk to dads like you and oftentimes the father of the family is like the foundation. They feel like they need to provide, financially. So they're so focused on providing, they forget about themselves and they go, yes, like that's it, Oliver. Oliver gets me. That's why I'm not where I'm at. I was focused on being a foundation and providing, and I made my decisions for my family. That's why I'm not where I want to be. I still got them to take ownership, to be a foundation, to provide for their family, make decisions by locking them into that agreement. So I still got all the pros of them becoming a decision maker for their family there without the cons of it seeming very obvious. Like, here's your decision-making badge, put this ribbon on, you big boy. Like, you don't do that, right? You see the distinction, guys? Yes? Okay, cool. Michael, you're up.
Hey, how you doing? Great training. My biggest takeaway probably was like using bits to lock in what you said initially and to kind of like get them to agree with that. I think that's really cool. And also the metaphor as far as like the fly being stuck in the window and like the door is right there the whole time. I think that's really clever. That's sort of my biggest takeaways. I actually did have one question.
Yeah.
It's a great problem to have. I've been getting my leads have been generating my ads, excuse me, have been generating like really high caliber people, like personal injury attorneys that are making millions. And this guy was making $12 million a year. And it's just like, I gotta get used to probably speaking to that caliber of person, but I was trying to get to the transformational level as far as like, hey, like when we get you to that goal, like what's the impact gonna have? And it's just all money, right? Oh, well, I want to be able to get more money. And I'm trying to find a way to elegantly get to that transformational level by asking without being like, oh, well, I mean, what about your kids? Or like, what are your goals outside of work, without it sounding and coming off as like kind of like awkward or out of place. Do you have any recommendations as far as that?
Yeah, for sure. The first thing that I think about is this pace again, because oftentimes the pace in which you ask questions, if you just asked 4 questions in like a 15-second period, you ask that 5th question, typically they just answer. But if it's like this really slow process where it's like, and they know what you're asking, you're like, I want to go deeper with you for a second though. And really, when you said money, I really want to know what's kind of behind that. And so I guess what I'm really asking they already know what you're going to ask before you get it out. And then they have time to filter it. And they're like, dude, it's just, I want to get to X so I can get to Y. And it doesn't land, right? So the speed of the questions and the directness of the questions are important. Another thing to know, and this kind of circles back to what Oliver was mentioning, is there's a difference between what I call double commitment questions, which you should use in that case, Michael, and what NLP calls a double bind. NLP teaches something called double bind, and there's a distinction between a double commitment question. Here it is. Double bind is just like, do you want to eat an orange now or do you want to eat an orange later? And you're like, gotcha, right? Because either way, now or later, they're still going to eat the orange, which is, there's times to use that. Like when you said you wanted the installments, is that going to be debit or credit? That'd be considered a double bind because you still get the payment, right? Double commitment is a little bit different. Double commitment doesn't always lead to the exact same, yes, I'm going to do it. Double commitment kind of gives them more freedom. And it gives them the illusion of control too. So what you could say, Michael, and if you have the right pace that we talked about, the right congruency, you've been agreeing with him and he feels intelligent, smart, like an entrepreneur. So he has like his guards down. And you say, and I love talking to entrepreneurs because there's always, the bigger reasons. And the best part of my job is always get to hear this from you guys. Like, is that more so that you can like increase that revenue so you can build a team below you? Or is it like, if you can increase that revenue, you have other goals with your company, or what's kind of the bigger goal behind it? And you give them like two options. Is that so you can increase your revenue and build a bigger team? Or is that so you can increase your revenue and maybe buy your time back? Like, I always love hearing like the core reasons behind it. And you said it like that, like, is it this or that? They almost always are going to give you one of them. So I love those double commitment questions where it's a fast speed, and they go, well, I guess kind of both, but mostly want to, you know, create high quality jobs for my employees. Love it. And that's really what it's about, right? Creating these things for other people. Like, when I've been lucky enough to speak to a lot of high level entrepreneurs like you, right? Some notice the frame there. I've been lucky enough to speak to a lot of high level entrepreneurs like you. And it always ends up being the people who are most successful are the people who give back like that. So it's really cool to hear that from you. Like, yeah, man, that's what it's about.
And that's connected to like there, because it's so hard, because it's like they have no pain. Like, this dude's making $12 million a year. Like, he's just like, I'm happy. And I'm like, he's talking about like, oh, I just want to have fun, you know, I just want to be able to enjoy it. And I'm like, I kind of like try to get into like that little niche about like, you know, oh, well, you know, we're going to be able to free up more of your time. And he's like, no, I mean, I walked in the office today, 11 a.m. like, and there was no problem, you know? So it's just like, so, but you're talking about, that identity as far as like them being a business owner and being able to build up this team. Maybe that's their baby. That's like what they're passionate about.
Yeah, it'll work. Those double commitment questions will work. And then also, he has pain, 1,000%. He has pain. Yeah, it's maybe the word that he brought up, fun. Maybe he felt like he wasn't having fun in the past, so he's protecting himself. There's always reasons behind it. It's just we can't go through it right now on this call. If I listened to the call, we could tell you like exactly what it was. But everyone has pain. Someone just dropped it in the chat too. There's pain behind it. Like, his language, like, everyone has some reason that they're saying that. Like, he wants to have fun. That came from somewhere. Just his drive of wanting to make even more money when he has 12 million, that's coming from somewhere. Everyone has it. It's just being able to get them to open up without realizing that they're opening up, you know?
Yeah, 100%. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, let's do one more. Marco, let's close it out. I know we're 25 minutes over. I appreciate you guys' patience. It must be fun because we're still hanging out. You're up, Marco.
Yeah, it's going to be real quick. It actually kind of speaks to what I guess finding some sort of pain. And I was going over these, I guess, presupposition questions. I was going to ask you about it. I didn't know what they were, and I feel like I should have. So basically, the example that he gave me, I guess the pattern is, when you looked at X, what did you come up with? When you looked at X, what did you come up with? So when you looked at how much your nest egg will provide for you in retirement, were you happy with that number? So if he's never looked at that, then he'll tell you, or if he really doesn't like that number, then he'll tell you. So how do you feel about presupposition questions, and like, do you use them? Because I actually did not like the follow-up question. It was like a double bind type of thing. And if the prospect says, oh, I never looked at it, okay, well, is it because that's not important enough to look into, or because you weren't worried about running out of money? I mean, which was it?
Right. So I think the answer to Marco's question, Marco's asking about a technique in NLP called presuppositions. Really powerful, especially when you're speaking one to many. It works really well when you're doing like Facebook Lives type of stuff. You could absolutely do it on sales calls, but I also don't know if you always need it. And it's kind of like, how surprised will you be when you get these results type of thing? You know, I'm wondering if you hit the ground, if you're going to hit the ground running and get results in the first week, like some people, or if it's going to be like the normal couple months till you see like the big, you know, your big goal. I'm wondering if it's going to be fast results or results in a month. Like, it's either way, you're going to get results is kind of the presupposition there. Those work. They work, but they're also not needed. The way I always think again is I did 91 closes right out of 101 calls, because I really made sure that I didn't say anything that could create resistance. And I just created the flow that had the most amount of, you know, a positive resourceful states. So I avoided any questions that could be like, well, then X, Y, like you said that, what happened with this? and now they're defending why they took the wrong position. I don't want that. And so you could add it. I think you could probably still get the outcome without those questions. Like I've seen the BJKU flow, obviously, Marco. That current flow is probably going to get you there already without needing the presupposition. Thumbs up, makes sense?
Oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Okay, cool. One thing to add to that as we close out, and this has been a huge difference. I'm doing a call review for someone recent, so I'll just give you guys the tip that I gave him. Nikki just wrote this in the chat. The part that is so key is avoid saying anything that creates resistance, right? The moment something sometimes, or someone says something to you, their brain is going to convince themselves what they said was a good thing to say. Even if it was wrong, they're going to convince themselves why they said it. It's just the way our brains work. And so in a sales call, if you ask questions and they get them to say something that was a bad thing, their brain's still going to convince themselves that what they said was a good thing. I've seen people make this mistake on sales calls where someone's in an objection and they might say, you know, the prospect, Pam, is like, this sounds great, but I want to think about it. And the salesperson, Oliver, goes, okay, and what makes you want to wait? Why do you want to wait? And now they go, well, and now their brain thinks of all these reasons they want to wait. And their brain's going to back up their decision, right? You allow, by asking that question, you led them down a path that gave them ammo to wait. You don't want that, right? So think of questions that create why they want it, why they want to do this now. That's what you should do. And if you do that, you'll be head and shoulders above 99% of salespeople. All right, y'all. I appreciate you guys very much. We went a long time today, 90 minutes, but hopefully it was helpful. We'll drop the recording in less than 48 hours. See you guys soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.